is probably. I turned my microphone on. Okay, that may be better. Yeah, you can hear better. Good. All right, good morning, everybody. And we are here for our May 31st, 2026 Unity New Thought World Religion class. And Susan, good to see you again.
Good to be here.
For some of us, we just had a celebration of life. LB was there too, for our friend Steve Nunn, who passed away a few weeks ago.
It was the weirdest funeral I ever did.
You know what? And it was so neat because it was at what I call Hammond's Field. They've changed the name now to Route 66 Field. But they had, a field box, which I had never been in before. And his son, Alex, held the celebration there because Steve loved baseball. And so, but it was like pouring down rain. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Paul.
And so Sue and I were waiting at our house going, there's no way this thing has got to be canceled, Fortunately, I texted Alex and he said, oh, come on down, so.
You should have got there earlier. We were able to watch at least.
I wish I would have. And if I wanted to come at 4 to catch the first game. And John was the wise one there. He was inundated with very valuable baseballs at that first game, I guess, and got to sit out and watch the game. So, but always I honestly think of Steve every day, and just really thought he was an incredible guy. So, but, one of those things in life, things happen, and life goes on. So, okay, today we're going to be talking about Charles Fillmore, but we're not going to be necessarily looking at the bibliography of Charles. I have done a class before on Charles, done one on Myrtle. It's never do I tire of talking about Charles because I love the examples in his life. I love the examples in Myrtle's life. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be really taking more of an advanced course in Charles here. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be exploring what might have been going through the mind of Charles and Myrtle when they first kind of started Unity, and what really brought them to where they went with it. Okay, so just a very, very, very brief intro to Charles. He was born in 1854, so mid 19th century, and he died just less than 100 years later. He died in 1948. So what was that? 96, 94. I think 96 years old. That he lived to be. He was born on an Indian reservation in Minnesota. Very, very poor. Okay, so all his life he took Native culture very seriously, and actually incorporated Native culture into Unity as well as many other things. And we're going to be talking about that in a little bit. So he didn't really have much formal education. I don't know how far he went. Back then, 8th grade was a lot of times that was about as far as you carried it. Morning, Larry. However, even though he didn't have a whole lot of education, he was very successful in business and in real estate. Okay, and he actually has at least one street named after him in Kansas City. I don't know if it's Fillmore Avenue, Fillmore Street. I have to look that up. But he was very successful, not only in Kansas City area, but also in Colorado. They lived in Colorado for quite a while. Yeah, however, he struggled physically as a child, right? Do you remember that? Everybody remember that story? What was wrong with? Okay.
Yeah.
So
shorter leg.
Yeah, okay, good. He had a shorter leg, and that was because of an accident, I believe. And so his leg was literally, according to readings, now it's hard to know if this is totally accurate, but 6 inches shorter than the other one. Until we know what happened later. Go ahead, Susan.
I really think Mildred.
Go ahead. I want people to hear what.
I think Mildred ought to get more credit for all of this.
Myrtle.
I mean. Didn't she really start the healing process for herself?
I'm going to be getting into that.
Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, I'd love to do a class on Myrtle. I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit here and say what you just said, and that is Myrtle is as responsible and should get as much credit as Charles, if not more. Because yes, she was the catalyst that really started it all. And the way I kind of want to look at it is, if you looked at a plane or a train, one of them would be the body of that vehicle, and the other would be the fuel. However, neither would work, or you couldn't move if you didn't have both, right? So they were a perfect pair for that which we know of now as unity in my mind. Going back to Charles with the leg, after Myrtle was cured, what did Charles do? He started doing the principles, right? And anybody know? His leg grew back. Yeah. Okay. So it was that mind over body, right? So the mind created the nerves to react in a certain way, for the cells to react in a certain way, and it's that which we believe in unity, is that we can heal, and that we use spirit, we use God to help us to heal. So this is a discussion. I'm using this as a discussion. I'm not here lecturing to you. You are going to pull down from inside of you and talk about what you might think about certain things. My first question to you is, how often do our deepest teachings come from our deepest wounds? Think about that. How often do our deepest teachings come from our deepest wounds? Does anybody have any examples? Does anybody want to share what they might think? Go ahead, Jared.
My childhood.
Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate?
Wow. It's a big subject. It's like, I think that all of us, in our raising, find so much that we can actually go back and look at to see maybe the personality that we are today.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
I've had a few of those different events, but the one example that just always really hits me is when Power of Now. Eckhart Tolle talks about that anytime you get poop scared out of you, or life just really happens to you, and it just shocks you into the current moment, and you stop thinking about your routine ways of looking at things that have put you in that position where you see things you normally wouldn't.
That's right. I think sometimes the greatest teachers are those who have had the direct personal experience from pain, right? They've lived it. Because they lived it, they were able to overcome the fear of it, and were able to then have the compassion, the empathy, in order to be able to teach it to others. Right? So I see both Merle and Charles as going down that road, that their own experience was what really brought them to where they were to be able to start Unity. Okay. Go ahead, Elby.
His being raised in poverty, I'm sure, accelerated once he found what he could do with his thought patterns.
Yeah.
He created an amazing village and business and farm, and he just kept right on anything he would imagine. He just imagined it, and it flowed.
Yeah.
His son said that he would have just made block buildings, but because his son had studied the architecture, they went with it, and it is beautiful.
Yeah. You're talking about Unity Village?
Yeah.
There's an interesting story there, and John, then I'll get to you. Charles could have cared less about the architectural stuff at Unity Village. There's kind of the grassroots part of Charles, which I would love, and then there's the institution of Unity. Okay, and I see value, big time value, in both of those things. Charles wanted to build basically tin shacks because Unity Village back then was called the farm, and it was supposed to be a retreat for Unity workers and a place for them to grow their food and stuff like that. He wanted to put the money into just metal buildings, His son, however, saw a greater vision, right? He saw the institutional part of it, the part that was going to grow to keep the teaching thing intact long after they were gone, long after he was gone. And wow, am I glad he did. Because it's knockout beautiful. And if you haven't been to Unity Village, oh my gosh, you gotta go.
Could you give the time frame?
Time frame of
The
what?
time frame of this.
Like
when?
Okay, he was born
when you're
in
like
mid-19. Okay, around 1900, a little bit before actually, was when they really started what's called the Unity. Although it was a grassroots movement. We're going to get into that. And then as time went on, they became much more popular. They became more popular through magazines, through radio, they had the largest vegetarian restaurant in the world. And yeah, they had a large church in downtown Kansas City, which still exists. And then later on, around roughly 1920, maybe a little before, they bought land out in the country, and that was the very beginning of Unity Village. Today, we think of Unity as Unity Village, but there was much more to it before that. John?
Yeah. I was just going to observe that both with Myrtle and Charles, that in order for them to do this healing, they experienced some pain and disease and stuff.
Yeah.
And the first step that they had to do, they had to have self-compassion.
Yeah.
Want, and that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And I think they're great role models.
Yeah. Go ahead, Larry.
Yes, you mentioned about Myrtle and Charles healing themselves. There's a thing we inherit our DNA from our ancestors, our genes. However, whether they get turned on or turned off, a lot depends upon the environment. And a lot of people think our thoughts can also turn genes on and off.
Yeah.
And so that could have been an issue with both of them.
Yeah.
Turning genes on and turning genes off.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Just for myself, I'm going to throw these out because they're from me, and I very much me. When I was 30 years old, and at the time raising 5 children, got stage 4 cancer, and was given roughly a 50-50 chance of making it. And that impacted my life hugely to the point where I learned so much about me and my makeup and everything, and went on to do a lot of different things because of that. Also, when later on, after I was healed from that, I went through bankruptcy, got down to the point where I had $200 to my name, quit my job, and said, I'm going to do what I want to do. And that was taking a huge leap of faith because I still had kids to raise. I still and actually my business became very successful. But it's that pain. You know, take away everything you have, give yourself $200 and say, well, start fresh, you know, that will trigger something inside of you where, you know, it's fight or flight.
Were you alone in that?
I was divorced and yeah, I was. So anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
So it says here, the sacred wound. The wound is in place where the light enters you. That is coming from the Sufi poet Rumi. Okay, the wound is the place where the light enters you. Okay, so that does kind of make sense to me. So, okay, I'm going to go on unless everybody else has anything more about our wounds. Okay, going back to what Susan was saying. Myrtle Fillmore actually helped start the movement. I don't know that Unity would have ever got off the ground if it wasn't for Charles, but I know Unity wouldn't have gotten off the ground if it wasn't for Myrtle. Okay. Myrtle was the seed, I guess I should say, and she was the steady hand. I think sometimes Charles could go out on a limb, and often did, but that was his way of doing things. That's how he learned and how he taught. Myrtle was always that steady, very, very much foundation. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, we see that also with Mary Magdalene and Christ.
Okay.
That you know, if it wasn't for Mary Magdalene after he was crucified, we probably wouldn't have even a notion of what the Christian religion was.
Yeah. Good point. I think that there's a whole subject there, and I don't know if it's for me to be the one to really teach that sometime, but there's a whole lineage there of women apostles and women teachers that have been dropped intentionally. And I think that would be a great class. Not you know, just however, I think it would be wonderful to really get into that and do some research because so much has been hidden there. 1886, Myrtle attended a lecture by E.B. Weeks, student of Christian Science. What was it that she heard? What was the catalyst that started Unity, that started her healing process? Anybody remember that?
It was the offshoot of Christian Science.
Excuse me?
It was the offshoot of Christian
I know. That's not my point. What did she hear from E.B. Weeks?
I'm a child of God, therefore I'm not inherited.
Good, thank you, Dee. And Jerry? People?
All right, okay. That's all I have.
Okay, I'm going to repeat what Dee said. I am a child of God, therefore I do not inherit sickness, okay, or illness. Okay, that was the very beginning of what we know now of as Unity. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to what Elby said, and that is, did you know at one point Unity, they actually called themselves Christian Science? Okay, there were actually several groups that called themselves Christian Science. They all agreed at some point to drop the name Christian Science and let the group that Mary Baker Eddy had keep the name Christian Science, and that's when Charles and Merle created the name Unity. That's how we got Unity. At one point, what we now know of as Christian Science was a part of New Thought. Mary Baker Eddy, I'm going to just say this, you might disagree with me, was a control freak and did not want to be a part of New Thought. So she branched out on her own totally. And even though all of the teachings were basically the same as New Thought, she did not want to be associated with us. Okay. I think that's different now a little bit. I don't know. I don't know Christian Science that much. Okay, second, next part here. Unity began in a living room, not in a church. Okay? How about our own church? I think I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Okay. We started off in a home, right? And actually went through a couple of homes before we got a real building. They held prayer groups at home. They answered letters. They published magazines. And they taught practical spirituality or practical Christianity. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. Originally, Unity was less institutional, more experimental, and more metaphysical. So my next question is, what gets gained and lost when movements become institutions? Okay. You have to think here, okay? This is a class for you to think. What gets lost when we go from grassroots to institutions? On any group, doesn't have to be just Unity.
I think it goes back to survival, and you get kind of stuck in the money idea.
Okay. Yeah.
My dad was raised a Christian Scientist, and then he got into Scientology back in the 50s.
Yeah.
And he started sending his mail back to them probably in the early 70s, saying address cease, because he said they were all about money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, it just seems to get away from us then.
Right. Right. Go ahead, John.
I think also there's an infusion of each of our own individual ideas about what it is that we're studying. So it can stray from the original ideas, and yet it can also feed new and let those original ideas grow beyond where they were before. So I think that's the kind of a push-pull in terms of the idea of.
Good. Thank you.
I think you get grandchildren, and the grandchildren haven't had the experience. They have the institutionalized teaching, but they're there because their parents were there, not because they're seekers themselves. And so the teaching goes from people that are taught to people that are teaching, and they don't have the experience. They think it's a good idea, but they're not really like the people that started the church with Charles and Phil and Myrtle were people that were seeking healing. They were somewhat desperate because they wanted to know, and so that was the foundation. And so you had this whole group of seekers that were seeing the experience. They were seeing it with other people. But when their children grow up, they know the teachings, but they don't have the experience. And so they can't pass that seeker's mentality or vibration, whatever it is, onto other children. And it waters it down.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just going to mention a few positives, and I don't want to say negatives, but some of the things that we gain, some of the things that we might not be able to hold on to quite as well. when we turn it, hi Dwayne, when we turn things into institutions, we do get a sense of longevity and sustainability. Things are, we have a means and a vehicle for keeping on, for traveling, for carrying it further, right? We have people who are now employees instead of maybe volunteers. We have physical spaces. We have systematic processes for doing things. And this makes it easier. This makes us able to carry on, quote, the work. We have a consistent impact. One Unity Church might be the same as another Unity Church. However, I would say in Unity, that's a little bit different than most organizations. I think we do have more autonomy than probably most other organizations. There's a standardization that the core mission is carried out predictably, and that we have a resource base of steady income, dedicated staff, and we have a broad audience all over. Okay, those things didn't happen with grassroots. Now, what did we lose because of, or what do we lose because we kind of went away from the grassroots? We lost an agility and flexibility to make decisions, bureaucracy, the hierarchy sometimes takes more of a precedence. Sometimes the radical vision. Charles was a very radical thinker. The radical vision can get watered down. Sometimes that spontaneous innovation, the tenure, the credentials, ministers, sometimes that takes over from the risky rule breaking. If you remember right, if you study Unity at all, Charles was not into having ministers. He wasn't even into having a church. He didn't want a church. He called it the school of Christianity, of practical Christianity. And it was like other people talked Charles into setting up a structure and having ministers and having some sort of a foundation for growing unity. Charles was into the grassroots. He was just, that's where he was at. So, any other questions or comments before we go on with that?
One area that I'm curious about is I would like to see either writing, maybe notes or something from where he was taking in native and Eastern ideas and how the culture at the time kind of molded how it ended up.
Yeah, I agree, and again, that was going to be part of what I'm going to be talking about here. Unity came from more than just Christianity, right? It came from more than just the Bible, okay? And Charles had more of an effect on that than I think Myrtle did. And so Charles did take from native culture. He did take from Eastern religion. He did take from mysticism. He was an avid reader, and he would read outside of Christian circles, right? He was, he thought. He liked to think, and he had his own opinions. So his central beliefs were, first of all, God is not a distant being. Okay, this goes way away from traditional Christian thinking. Charles often rejected the idea of God as an external ruler. He wrote, God is not a big man residing somewhere beyond the skies. Instead, God is omnipresent life, divine mind, creative principle, and indwelling spirit. So let me ask you this. I'm assuming a lot of you have gone to traditional Catholic or Protestant churches when you grew up, or at least you know something about them. How does prayer change if God is within rather than out, rather than being distant? How does prayer change? again, this is something I want you to think about. Go ahead, Elby.
Well, you have to bring it home to your inner being because there isn't anything out there. And so you catch yourself trying to put something out there and you're like, there isn't anything out there. It's all internal, and yet in a way it's out there because it's everything, but you're that connection with everything. So your prayer has to come from inside yourself. You have to change the way you see things because there isn't any rescuer. And so you have to realize that what you're creating is because of the way you're thinking. And so it changes your whole perspective.
How many people, one statement, then I'll go to you, Caps. How many people feel comfortable with prayer? Okay. Most everybody here, good. I was just really curious because a lot of people, like, if I'm asked to pray in front of a group of people, I become uncomfortable. But if I think about my prayers individually, I'm very comfortable with that. Does that make sense to everybody? I was just curious how other people felt about that. Go ahead, Kat.
In reference to your question, just from my own experience of being raised in a dogma background, I think church teaching to be dependent on out rather than to be dependent on in, which removes a lot of your own empowerment. And I feel like it's kind of like this hidden Indian teaching that you can't trust yourself unless you're only praying and asking God to do this or do that versus Unity's path is empowering and utilizing it. And that just shifts everything. It's a whole total different manifestation mindset, the limitation, conditioning is removed, just a whole nother like skyrocket of desires, take off for lack of a better term.
Thanks, Kat. Georgia and then Dwayne.
Basically to simplify rather than asking, proclaiming.
Thank you.
That's good.
I remember when I started beginning to doubt the organized Christianity in the churches I'd sent to when I was about 7 or 8 years old. A friend of mine did something that was not right, and I told him that he shouldn't have done that. It wasn't nice. He said, "Oh, it's okay. I'll go to confession on Friday and I'll be forgiven."
How many times have I heard that? Or at least you could tell that people are thinking that at least.
And I thought, with what you're talking about here, with God being internal, that instead of praying to an outside God to forgive him, if he had talked to himself on the inside, he wouldn't have done anything like that again. But that was a moment in my life when I started getting away from organized basic Christianity.
That is so, and I think all of us have had those kind of experiences. Generally, I grew up Baptist, and so I've been around prayer all my life, as well as many of us have, I think. And of course, I still hear the prayers from traditional Christianity. It's an external plea, isn't it? God, help us get this, or help us do that.
Right.
Heal me from this, or whatever it might be. And I see it on Facebook all the time. Pray for my son. He's going through this, blah, blah, blah. And all that's, and I fall into it too. It's like, oh yeah, I definitely pray for you. But that's not what unity prayer is it? Okay. We're not praying to an external source, okay? We're not pleading with God to have mercy on us or whatever. We are having an intimate, transformative communion, okay, with a being that is inside us. You know, we use meditation, we use affirmations to become to change the world, but we change the world from within, right? And then because of that, then we help the world. Okay, so we're going from petitioning God to communing with God. We go from speaking to God to listening within, and we change the focus on the internal transformation. Okay. In Unity, we say that prayer is continuous. We do it throughout the day. And if you think about it, that's what we do, don't we? We're continually processing. We're continually, at least I do anyway now, I'm constantly talking with God. I'm constantly talking with that deep internal sense that I feel is that creative being inside. Go ahead, Jerry.
I call it consciously imagining.
Thank you. I like that. Consciously imagining.
I'm going to go back and tell another story about my dad. He used to tell me that he could control the weather.
Okay.
And I put him to the test one day. I think I was 18, and I went to a concert, an outdoor concert, Jefferson Airplane in Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah.
And I asked him before I left to make sure it was a nice day for us all.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, I'll do that. And and it rained its butt off. I mean, all night long we're sitting there because we wanted to save our seats in the second row. You know, we're freezing in the rain, just getting poured on. And at noon, the sun came out and dried everything off, and then the band started to play.
Yeah.
When I got home, I was complaining a little, and I said, "What happened, Dad?" And he goes, I forgot until about noon."
Okay, everything that I said, forget it. I'm convinced.
I mean, it's like what you're saying is we may think we believe that, but if we are not fully conscious of our abilities and our powers,
who knows?
It
I
ain't
mean,
gonna
I've seen so many strange things in my life. It's so true. And I don't want to take away from people praying to, you know, God or pleading with God for something, or, you know, and my next question is going to kind of get to that too. So,
But he was a metaphysician.
What's that?
Her dad was a metaphysician.
Oh,
so
okay.
He wasn't praying to somebody outside of
okay.
himself. He was just commanding the weather to stop.
well, and I asked him. He told me. I basically asked him how he did it.
Yeah.
And he said he said he shot a beam of light up out of himself and created it that way.
Larry.
Yes, I was. You meant, Unity believes that God is everywhere. So if God is everywhere, isn't He also external as well
Absolutely.
as internal?
Absolutely. Yeah. For us, you know, I think we just need to recognize that God is in us too, rather than being something out there in the skies. But you know, in Unity, obviously, everything is God. Every little thing from the beginning of creation until now. And I'm going to get to this in this next question here, okay? So in Unity, we generally don't pray to Jesus. Why not?
Because He's not doing it.
Okay.
He said he
want to
wasn't doing it.
elaborate on that? Go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead, John.
Because
Hey, hang on. I want the mic.
Well, my understanding is that it's not something that's outside of me.
Okay.
And so, so it's what I am.
Okay. Thank you. In Unity churches, we pray directly to that universal presence, God, rather than to Jesus. Unity views Jesus not as God to be worshipped, but as a way shower. perfectly demonstrated the divine potential that exists within everybody. Okay, so we do put Jesus up here, right? But he's as a way shower. He's not the only way shower. Any other way showers everybody knows of? Go ahead, Jerry.
We're both the teacher and student.
What's that?
We're both the
Okay.
teacher and student.
Okay. All right. Does anybody think that maybe Buddha or Lao Tzu?
certainly.
You could go on. The Vedas, early on, thousands and thousands of years ago, were they not also part of God too? Did they not have way showers? Okay. All now in Unity, we do take Jesus as our way shower because that's where it came from. Okay. So we use Jesus as that example of demonstrating divine potential, but we don't worship him. So there's a big difference. So therefore, we don't pray to him any more than we would pray to each other. I bow down to you, Larry. You are God. Or anybody else. It's different in Unity, and I think a lot of people don't quite understand that who first come into Unity. Okay, so Unity focuses on God instead of Jesus. We use the Christ principle, okay? Christ is not just the last name of Jesus, right? So there's a distinction here. Jesus is a historical person. Christ is the divine spark of consciousness that exists from the beginning of time until now. And so prayer is aimed at that omnipresent universal spirit. Unity doesn't believe in the need for an intermediary, okay? Because Unity teaches that every individual possesses inherent divinity. Okay. All right.
But they don't.
Go ahead, Elby.
They don't negate assistance. I mean, the Unity Prayer Tower has been in existence forever and ever.
Mhm.
And so they acknowledge that sometimes you need help getting there. Sometimes you need help retraining your mind. Christian Science use practitioners, I think Unity could have benefited from that program.
Yeah.
But they don't have that, but they still recognize the need for assistance at times.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, to the point about the external versus internal and omnipresence, we can always tap into the omnipresent, like when a number of people were starting to meditate about peace in New York City and the crime rate went down, and we always want to, we always have an opportunity to, when we pray for another person, it's praying into the omnipresence that connects us all. So it's not an intermediary, it's like it's into the field.
Okay. Thank you, John. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I forget.
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
My name's Travis.
Okay.
I'm Travis Wiley.
Hi,
I'm from
Travis.
Little Rock. Drove
Okay.
up yesterday. I go to Unity Church in Little Rock.
Oh, okay, good.
We always love visitors,
Oh,
traveling to town,
yes,
come
yeah.
to
I've been to your
Little Rock. And have you been to Unity?
Oh, yeah.
I thought you looked familiar.
In the Lutheran church?
Yeah, we made that. That's right. About a year ago, we had to sell our building, and we had a great church there for 5 years.
Yeah.
Unity. And I saw this guy was on y'all's Facebook page. I saw your class last week. I think you were the teacher last week. Yeah. And I thought this would be a fun class to come to, and it is. Y'all gonna be great. I've been in Unity Church for 30 years.
Oh, thank you so much
I've been
for
prayer chaplain
coming
in
here,
Little Rock.
Travis.
I've been to many of the prayer chaplain retreats, and my thoughts on that have changed. I never knew though that Unity was one time a spirit of mine. I mean, Christian Science group.
Oh,
Never
okay,
knew
okay.
very big.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share this. I think you guys will find this interesting. I'm an anthroposophist as well. Today I really study more of Rudolf Steiner's work. It's really my spiritual path. I still am very involved in Unity.
Yeah.
And I read this recently in a lecture because it was the same time period when Myrtle Fillmore, the infantry, I do not inherit illness. That's when genetics was really coming into the full stream.
Okay.
And Rudolf Steiner gave a lecture to the doctors at the time about the fallacy of heredity.
Okay.
And he said that heredity is it's a belief in materialism.
Okay.
And he said that with the right conception of soul, and that's a caveat, with the right conception of soul, spirit neutralizes the physical.
Okay.
Which I thought was very powerful.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, Charles was studying the theosophy teachings of a Blavatsky and a Rudolf Steiner and Alice Bailey and all those people at the time. I don't understand, and you can maybe answer this for me. I've got one more thing to say. I don't understand why Charles Fillmore rejected karma and reincarnation. Because to me, you can't really understand the spiritual. None of this makes sense in my mind until you bring in an understanding of karma and reincarnation.
Yeah.
And then finally, about Jesus, and I have to share this. I came from a Church of Christ background. And after 33 years, when I found Unity, I'd gotten sober. I found Unity Church. It was like a breath of fresh air. The teachings of Jesus, what I learned in the Church of Christ. I never wanted to worship a God that would kill his only kid for me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask you to do that. I didn't trust somebody. If you killed your own son, what would you do to me? So Unity took me to a step further. Well, then, so this is in 2007.
Yeah.
I'm going to plant a seed here for those of you who are interested. In 2007, I've been an anthroposophist studying Rudolf Steiner's work for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
I've been a Unity for like 12 years at that point. I am down in Austin, Texas at the annual general meeting of the Anthroposophical Society of America to see what it's all about. I'm learning more about this. On the syllabus, there's a speaker who turns out is a retired Baptist minister and an attorney named Edward Smith. He's passed away now, and he's got a lecture called The Two Jesus Children.
Okay.
And I thought, what the hell? That's a bunch of BS. But I was curious, and I went. And ladies and gentlemen, in the Church of Christ, I had a certain level of knowledge. I came to Unity Church, and y'all gave me knowledge and information, and it expanded my understanding of Christ and Jesus and what that was about.
Yeah.
And all I can say is there is a whole entire body of knowledge that is available about Christ and the teachings of Christ. I recommend Rudolf Steiner's Christology. And when you understand the mystery of Jesus, of the two Jesus children, the mystery of the Christ, you will never again say that Jesus was just a way shower, one of many. No. You will never say that Christ is something. No. Christ was the turning point of time.
Okay.
What other way shower, what other life, what other impact has ever entered into humanity that caused us to change the way we keep time, and the whole entire planet agreed on it? Look up Rudolf Steiner and the two Jesus children. Edward Smith is the man's name.
Well,
it doesn't take away anything, and I talk about this at Unity of Little Rock. I've given classes. I taught a class on the two Jesus children.
Yeah.
I think it's so important that to understand that. Thank y'all for letting me be here and blabber on. I'm sorry.
Thank you for speaking up there. I don't know anything about what you had just said. I will just address the thing about reincarnation. It's my opinion that nobody knows everything.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And
you can't tell them that.
And that Charles was not immune to saying some things that I don't agree with. And you can find anybody that I would say the same thing about. That doesn't mean that I don't think Charles was an incredible person and started a great movement But as far as his belief in reincarnation, I didn't know that if he didn't believe in reincarnation. That's his opinion. Charles also believed that the physical body did not have to die. I disagree. You may think the same way as Charles. You have your right. So Charles did not. There is no organization. There is no person that I believe that has it 100% right down the line. Go ahead.
When you the things have changed since then. But when I got my license Unity teacher, you had to do a short meditation and a talk.
Yeah.
And they give you the subject, and my subject was reincarnation.
Oh, okay.
And from what I studied, Unity believes in the possibility of reincarnation.
Yeah, okay.
They're not as rigid as,
Yeah.
But at least I found out they believe in the possibility.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Who knows? I mean, this is all a big. We don't know what happens after we die. I mean, and we have a lot of evidence. We have near-death experiences that people give us good ideas on what happens, right? We have some pretty incredible research out there to show that this kid over here that says he was born in that town over there and knows Uncle Joe and lived at this address, and you're going, what the heck? Do I think that kid just made it all up and it just coincidentally happened to be the correct information? So, do I believe in reincarnation? Yes. Do we know exactly what happens after we die? After someone dies, how do we know they weren't reincarnated and that we can't talk with them anymore? Who knows? Nobody knows. We're going to find out. Go ahead, Susan.
So the Mayan calendar apparently has us coming back so many times around until we get it done.
Yeah.
And they say we do it in order.
Mm-hmm.
So right before my dad died, he was dating a woman that had a son with a club foot. And I remember he was just really curious about that whole club foot thing. What's causing it and all that?
Yeah.
My first grandson was born with a club foot. And I looked him up on the Mayan calendar, and it was in the next step for my dad.
Okay.
I almost lost it.
Yeah.
And then I looked at my mom and my daughter, and Mom never had a happy life. Well, my daughter married a man and has 2 kids and is living a pretty darn happy life.
Good.
And I looked her up at the same time. Yeah, next step on the Mayan calendar. Blew me away.
Dwayne has a comment. And then I want to get to these 12 powers here. We don't have much time, and I'm kind of skipping a lot of things in my talk. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to make something about reincarnation. I've read a number of books on that with examples. For example, this young boy, when he got up where he could talk, told his parents that a former neighbor had murdered him in a nearby town. Now, this was in India, and most Indian accept reincarnation just a fact. So anyway, the boy got older and kept telling the story. His parents took him to this town. He showed the police where his former neighbor had buried his body. They dug it up.
Oh my God.
And he showed where his former neighbor had buried the hatchet that he was murdered with. They found the hatchet. And what's really interesting, this young boy, when he was born, had a birthmark on the top of his head. When they dug that body up, the skull was shattered in the same pattern as his birthmark. And there are many stories like that. That's just one. There are many. And I've had an out-of-body experience myself and discovered a past life and later found where I had lived. And even today, 40 years later, when I talk about it, the hair stands up in my arm because it was such an amazing experience. I guess I believe.
Okay, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't cover. I will probably do another class and include Myrtle in my next class a little bit more and still cover what I didn't hit. Charles, and I don't know if Myrtle was part of this too, I'm assuming so, came up with our 12 powers. Okay, we're very familiar with this. I wanted to give you a sheet on that. I'm not giving a sheet to you just so you can see them. I'm giving it to you because before you leave, I want to know what it is that is strongest in you. With what power is strongest in you? And what power is it that you feel like I could use a little bit more work on this? What is it that is your strength? What is it that is something that you have an affinity for maybe working on? There's no wrong or right answers on any of this, obviously. It's just something that if you can get a little bit of inside reflection on that, let's go with it. So this is going to be a little boring for anybody online. But if you're looking at the 12 powers, we have faith, strength, wisdom, love, power, imagination, understanding, will, order, and zeal. What is it that you're strongest in? And what is it that you want to work on? And this might be something that today you feel one way and tomorrow you're going to feel totally something different.
I was thinking because for several years, and somebody here may be able to do this better than I've been able to, I keep trying to connect the 12 powers to the 12 zodiac. I study sidereal astrology too, Indian Vedic astrology, and so to me, I'm thinking like today we got this full moon, in sidereal, the moon's in Taurus, and so it's like that. So that wisdom and that love and that zeal so. I'd be curious, if anybody else follows your chart, if you notice how these powers play into your being, given the time of the year.
Okay. I'm going to give you just a few more seconds here because we do have to end this in like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Anybody want to share what might be their strength or what would they want to work on? Dwayne.
I will. Is it on?
Yep.
I think you got the magic button. There.
I haven't looked at each one in detail, but I think love is a strong thing for me because sometimes when I'm out in public and I find myself judging someone from the way they're acting or the way they're dressed or whatever, I've started telling myself, I love you. You're my brother or my sister and got family and I love you. And I just make myself say that. And I think my weakest thing is release. Because I find myself still fretting about things that happened 8 or 10 years ago. I wish I could go back and change. And I tell myself, it's done. You can't go back. So I think initially those two are the two for me.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for starting us off too. Anybody else? And you don't have to say anything, but if you do have something, that'd be great to share.
I think mine is wisdom. I've always kind of had a level head as far as things go. But my biggest problem that I've struggled with this my whole life is release, the ability to let go, forgive, and move on.
Wow.
I beat up myself more than anybody else.
Okay. Same as Dwayne. Yeah. Anybody else?
Sure. I would say my strongest one probably is zeal. And I just happen to be kind of a self-starter towards what I want to do. And I think probably my the one I need to work most on is faith.
Okay.
And that ability to consistently transcend this and see what really.
Thank you, Jonas. I hate to say this, and I take these with you and really look at them. These are some powerful things here. I think it's good to always self-reflect, and if we can kind of look and see, how am I keeping things going here with myself? We can kind of look. I think that reflection is so good, and both of you spoke on that, or all three of you spoke on that. Thank you for that. We may touch on this in my next class again, so I still have more of them. But I guess I'm supposed to read the announcements now. I think I'm going to end my class. Thank you all for putting up with everything here. And okay, everyone's invited this evening and every Sunday evening for meditation, 6 p.m. We have a men's group here on Tuesday. Any men are welcome to come. 6 p.m. It's a potluck also. Bring a dish to share. The Unity Drum Circle meets the first Thursday each month. I think that's this Thursday coming up. 6:30. Bring your own drum or borrow one of ours. Everyone's welcome. Next Sunday we'll welcome back Amy Burnett. She's going to be our guest speaker. She's been a board member for over 12 years, or member for over 12 years, currently serves as our board president. Next Sunday is Friendship Sunday, so I guess we're not going to be having class probably next Sunday. But we're going to be having a potluck, so bring a dish. Okay, there's no 9:15 new fact class next week. We're excited to announce the formation of our new building and grounds team. This team is for anyone who would like to help with basic repairs, maintenance, or landscaping at our church property. And I can see we have a branch that came down over here, so that's...
So anybody who's on the team.
Yeah, anybody on the team. And if nobody does get it, I'll probably come. Come join us for a free seminar presented by the Senior Resource Network of the Ozarks. This is an organization of professionals in the community who focus on the needs of senior citizens. They will discuss a wide range of resources, all of which most seniors or their children will likely need at some point in time. The seminar will be held June 10th, 10 a.m. here in church. We're going to be participating in this year's Ozarks Pride Fest. We will have a booth and also walk in the parade. Please sign up at the connection table if you would like to help in the booth. The volunteer time slots are for 2 hours. If you'd like to walk in the parade with us, the location, times, and parade route are on the connection table. And they're also taking t-shirt orders in case you want a t-shirt. Okay, let's go ahead and get